You ready? All right. And welcome into the first edition of the Brodie Hour here on Ocala TV. We're joined today by a very special guest. He is the planning editor of the New York Times, and he's the author of Red Dirt, Roots Music, Born in Oklahoma, Raised in Texas, at Home Anywhere. His name is Josh Crutchmer, and he is an OSU Ocala alum. Josh, how are you today?
Wonderful, Brodie. How are you?
I am pretty good. Great to be talking to you. So, you're the planning editor of the New York Times. What does that mean?
It means I have to know everything the New York Times is doing at all times. My job, quite literally, is to communicate with all of the editors from around the world that are involved in our broad news report and help turn that into the newspaper that people get at their homes, on newsstands all around the country. So literally, my job is to know everything the New York Times is doing. If I do my job right, I can tell you what's happening in our bureaus in Afghanistan and in our offices in Washington D.C. and out on the West Coast too, all within about 30 seconds.
Well, that's awesome. And that all culminates with you actually physically designing the New York Times. I think that's lost on some people that the newspaper they see every day has a human behind it. Take us through just the literal process of doing that.
Okay, so my background in journalism is in design, going all the way back to my time at the Ocala. And one thing that I have really learned over the years of doing this is that the best way to put out a well-designed and well thought out publication is to have it really be organized. And so those go hand in hand now. The New York Times, we want to look smart, informative. We want to look as edgy as a paper like the New York Times can be. We want you to see us and we want you to react to us. And to accomplish that, we have to be very smart about what we put in every square inch of the paper and all across our website, because there's such a gravity associated with the name the New York Times that everything we do can be really hyper analyzed. And so we're always really careful about every decision we make, and that extends to the visuals, and that extends to the look and the design of the paper. And that is why my job is inseparable from design now. And for the most part, the New York Times, as a publication, is designed a lot like any other publication would be. It is taken into a program similar to the Adobe InDesign that I'm certain the Ocala uses in some fashion, and a lot of publications from the magazine you read in the back seat of an airline that you're flying on to Rolling Stone are all published pretty much in one of 3 or 4 programs, and we're no different, with the exception of our front page, which is ultimately is designed by computer. But when we go to put that together, when we're in the office and not in this work from home era, we're in the office, one person is surrounded by editors that are watching and wanting to know what the front page is going to look like as we're talking it through. So we draw it on paper, which I actually could go get and show you if you would like. And part of my job is actually doing that. It is drawing the New York Times front page the same way it's been drawn for 150 years of our existence, by hand before it becomes a digital product. And that's a process that starts early in the morning when we have a discussion about what our biggest news stories are of the day. For example, right now it's September 10th, and our biggest news stories for tomorrow are going to come from sort of 2 areas. One being tomorrow is the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. That's a huge deal in the country, but especially in New York. And also we have dueling news events with Biden's vaccine mandate happening yesterday and the ongoing coverage of the withdrawal from Afghanistan. So we know already it's noon, we know that we have those three competing topics on our front page, and so the rest of our day is going to be spent figuring out how to balance it. What's going to ultimately get the big headline, what's going to ultimately get the big picture. Those discussions are constantly ongoing. We don't really view the publication of the newspaper as an end. It's just another point in an ongoing process that really never ends. And the part of my job that entails designing that actual front page is probably the most unique job I've had in journalism for that reason. Both because of the nature of the journalism that we do being never ending, but also the importance of every New York Times front page to the national, worldwide audience, really, that we have.
And you mentioned the gravity of the New York Times. The front
Yeah.
page of the paper, it gets to set the conversation for the day, and you kind of hold the keys to that. And not only that, I mean, the President of the United States, pretty much everyone on Capitol Hill, anyone that we see in the public every day is going to see your work every day. Does that sit with you? Do you ever ponder that? If that question makes sense?
The question makes perfect sense. And 350 out of 365 days a year, there's no greater honor in journalism that I could imagine. The weight is incredible. There are 15 days that those decisions make a lot of people, I would even say the majority of our audience, quite upset. And usually, for better or worse, what went into it was a lot of thought and care and planning, and the result just might not be what readers want. That stings, and on the rare occasions that we, probably could have done something differently, it's never lost on me that I was a part of that process too. It's an incredible responsibility, and it's just one that you go into the job every day knowing how important it is, and you really hope that you can live up to the expectations of that particular page and its impact on not just journalism, but on the entire country and in a lot of ways the world.
So I'm guessing the deadline is about 10 or 11 o'clock, which means you probably can't start designing the paper until 9:30 or 10. What are you doing throughout the day? Are you getting on like the photo server and like, oh, I'm going to use that, or thinking about what the big stories are? Can you walk us through that?
Okay, so at just about every other place at this point, and honestly, when I worked at the Ocali, it was this way. You spent the bulk of your day just trying to inform yourself about what stories and what visuals, usually meaning photography, but graphics and illustrations happen to, are out there. And at every other place I've been, and I would probably guess there's only a handful of papers that don't operate this way now. That job falls to really to one person to do just what you said, to scour everything that's available that might make an impactful front page. At the New York Times, we still thankfully have a whole team of people dedicated to that. I'm kind of the leader of the charge as far as being a clearinghouse for all the stories and all the photos, but we will have a front page photo editor every day, a front page graphics editor every day, and then we actually have a member of our masthead, meaning one of the top editors at the paper, who a major part of her job is to actually have the final say on all of the stories that go on the front page. So we thankfully get to make it a day-long collaboration. It doesn't always make it fun, because anytime you bring in 5-6 people, a lot of them, some of the most talented journalists in the world, into a process, they want their thoughts and opinions heard, but usually it's just great. Usually it is what you get into journalism for, if you want to make a life out of it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah. Well, and I think in the reporting sense, kind of the grunt is getting the sources, doing some of like the ear on the ground kind of stuff. What is the grunt of your job? What's the rough?
Um, Honestly, the rush for my job is when news breaks and knowing that we might have an hour to put something together, and in that hour we turn around a digital report that is at the top of everybody's search list. It's being shared widely on social media, and then we turn around not just a front page, but 4, 6, 8, or more pages of the print newspaper that are just so rich in content and so varied in the ways that will explain a story, and varied enough in the perspectives that we have that we really feel like we're telling a really complete and accurate view of whatever that event might be on that day. And then that becomes sort of the marker of history. That's the rush. Knowing that you are a part of a process that really takes the phrase paper of record and brings it brings it into real life, and brings it into the for lack of a better phrase, history books forever. And that happens to me more at the New York Times than it ever happened at any other place I'd been. I was at the Cleveland Plain Dealer when the Cavaliers won the NBA championship, um, and I'll never forget being 3 a.m. and people lining up outside of our press room in the suburbs. I mean, there was a line like for a concert or uh, you know just any other big event, but all they wanted to do was buy a newspaper at 3 a.m. And those presses started rolling, and they usually roll for about an hour and a half. They rolled for 7 straight days. Um, when I would carry around copies of that newspaper around downtown Cleveland for that week, I mean, I was a VIP. It was, wow, nice to see you with those newspapers here. You're going to cut this line, and you get this seat right here at the front of the bar. And the drinks are on me, sir. And that was a really that sort of a once in a lifetime rush. Um, but at the New York Times, you get to do that multiple times a week.
Yeah.
It's just not always as fun as seeing a city celebrating a championship, but it's also more important.
I understand. And you're right. The actual paper newspaper is a big thing for people. People frame it and put it on their wall. You've been at the New
Yes.
York Times, I don't know how long. Is there one that like really sticks out to you? Maybe an inauguration or a big historic event? Like that front page was a big one that's going to be in history books.
Um, I think the one that this is not a fun topic. I think earlier this year, on the day of the January 6th riots at the Capitol, we had for the first time that anybody could remember, we had a photo that we ran across the entire front page. And that happens a lot at every other newspaper in the world. We'd never done it before, to anybody's recollection. But we thought it was an image that's going to last for forever, not just for 10 or 20 years, or even 100, but will define a year and an era that a lot of Americans aren't very proud of, but that is also part of the job, and that is also part of why we do things. And what you just said is everything that goes into the print side of any publication worth its salt. You know that you're not breaking news in those pages. The news is being broke on social media. The news is being covered, um, you know, on both social media and in digital storytelling. But the newspaper is what people grab, and they keep and they hold on to, and they say this happened for better or for worse, and I'm going to remember it forever by holding this and by putting this away. And we really, really, really understand that. And I don't think I've ever been. That's not true. I have been that shaken as a journalist before, but I don't know that I've ever been a part of of a presentation of a story that was told as well as that was told in the New York Times that day.
So I want to bring you back. You're an Oklahoma kid. You're an Okie from Muskogee.
I am.
What?
Well,
What
Almoggy, but there's a
oh, okay,
Muskogee
I thought.
Street in Almoggy, and there's an Almoggy Street in Muskogee, and both of if you get on one of those streets, you can drive to the other town without changing roads.
Okay, Okmulgee. I thought I had it right. But anyway, when you were at Okmulgee High, did you ever dream of having a like? Was this even in your radar? How did you get from there to the New York Times and what you're doing?
Well, okay, I was I come from a family of athletes. My dad and his brothers were all college football players. One of them went to the University of Oklahoma. But so I was sort of raised around sports, very specifically, the college sports in the state. And it wasn't Oklahoma State either. I was usually surrounded by OU football. But I experienced that grew up in the 80s. The internet came around like when I was like in like sixth grade or so. So most of my life has been in some form digital, but my memories of sports were all experienced via newspapers. And my grandparents subscribed to the Daily Oklahoman, and Barry Trammell and John Rhodey had just gotten sort of their big breaks. And I would every Sunday morning I would go read about the college football from them when I was just a little bitty kid. And so that sort of always stuck with me, and created an early fascination for journalism. And by the time I was in high school, I still didn't know what I was going to do because I was a high school kid, and high school kids are, they have some growing to do. But I knew I was fascinated with journalism, and so I did join the high school newspaper at Almoggy High. And my senior year, I was the editor, writing some absolutely terrible columns that I hope nobody ever finds because I am just not proud of those at all. But that was my first foray into it. And by the time I got to Oklahoma State and became a journalism major, I didn't know it at the time, but my path was set. There was nothing else that I was ever going to be good at. I always thought I would go to school and major in journalism, but eventually I'd go to law school, and I did. I did for a semester and a half, and I thought I would just go on to some corporate career. But journalism is sort of as I think you probably, if you don't know this for sure, you were getting this experience as we speak. Journalism sort of chooses you, and
Yep.
so all of the people that tell you don't do it or want to warn you off of it as an industry, that's going to fall on deaf ears because the wand chooses the wizard sometimes, kids, and that's what journalism does.
Indeed. I think it was John Adams who had a quote, something along the lines of, if you're not good at any other reputable job, there's a seat for you in the newsroom.
There is, and there always will be.
Exactly.
I mean, but that sort of just became my life. I graduated Oklahoma State in 2001, and although I did drive back on September 11th, and I helped them design and put out that paper when that happened. I was just in Oklahoma City with nothing to do that day, so I did design the September 11th cover of the Ocali, weirdly enough, when it happened. But really, I left college and I got a job at the Oklahoman in sports. I was a sports designer and copy editor doing what you do, and it was really fun, and I met a lot of great people. And then after 5 years of that, I took a job at the Arizona Republic, and I can't really tell you why I did that. I was just sort of, I like the industry and wanted an experience, and just took that job and I lived in Phoenix for a year when I was in my right smack middle of my 20s, and that was so great and fun. But right about that time, the industry of journalism really did change, and so I can't really tell you why I took that job at the Arizona Republic, but I can tell you that since then I've had, I think, 7 jobs, and all in different cities. And I can tell you why I took all of those jobs, because I was running by that point, because the industry was changing. As a rule, print journalism did not react to the internet the way maybe it could have to thrive long term. And So I started going newsroom to newsroom to places that felt fun and promising and that I got to do a lot of great work in. But I knew pretty quickly that if I didn't want to change careers or, put my head in my hand and go back to law school apologetically, like, hey, sorry, I dropped out and I would like to finish this or something else entirely, that I better make it to the New York Times or the Washington Post. And it took a while. I took that job at the Arizona Republic in 2005, and I started at the New York Times in February of 2017. And every career move I had in between those was done with the idea of getting where I am right now. And it's a lot of sacrifice. Journalism is an unforgiving industry, and you have to do things like put it ahead of everybody else in your entire life at all times, and it's not at all fun. But then you make it to the New York Times, and it really does feel worth it. And I'm an Oklahoma State season ticket holder now. I get to go back to Stillwater all the time. Weirdly, getting this far away physically from the places that I call home has actually made it a lot easier for me now to embrace, especially Oklahoma State, both the side of which that you get to be a fan of it athletically, but also the institution. I get to do this, and I get to feel like I give back to the place that sort of gave me the life that I have. It took all of those long nights and weekends and missing birthdays and friends' weddings and just being not the best person you could be in the name of being a good journalist for it all to work out. And now it has. And now I feel really set. And the absolute highlight is that now in my job, I can be the Oklahoma State fan I really didn't get to be when I was doing all those things. It's just great.
Yeah. Well, my time is waning, but I'm going to ask you two rapid-fire questions.
Right.
Score prediction for tomorrow, and where can people find your book? We'll make you a little money.
Let's see. The score prediction for tomorrow. We're going to win. It's going to be something that feels okay, but isn't great. It'll be like 31-13, and we'll all wonder why it wasn't 51-13. But that's okay. That's what the early season's for.
Exactly.
And the short answer for the book is reddirtbook.com. I'm almost certain that I will be at the merchandise table on the Eskimo Joe's tailgate the night before homecoming, and I'll probably step out and sign a few books that night if anybody wants them. Very specifically, Tim Holland and Eskimo Joe's have been great in supporting this book, and so their homecoming event this year is like the rest of the university is going to be the 100-year homecoming. And so I'll be there at that, and there'll be a little merchandise table when the bands are playing, and the book will be there. And I'll step out for a bit and sign them too. So that'll be an in-person. Otherwise, reddirtbook.com.
Okay. Josh, thank you for the time today. This was awesome. You got a lot of great answers, and I could have asked you 100 more questions.
This rock, Brodie. Best of luck to you. And I'm a big fan of the times I get to hear you out on the public address airways too.
Well, thank you very much. This has been the Brodie Hour, the first edition. We'll see you next time with another electric guest. So long, everybody.